McCord went for and converted on will make you go, wow, with the amount of guts it took to make that throw. The problem is some of the throws that he also makes that don't go to his target make you go, wow, in a more negative way. While the raw stats are nice, I do just question how high of a ceiling a quarterback with a good, not great arm, turnover issues, processing issues, and limited scramble ability truly has in the NFL. Hey y'all! For this week's video, we'll be doing an in-depth analysis of Syracuse quarterback Kyle McCord. If you're new to these, my evals use a lot of different grading methods, which if you want more details on these, you can check out on my eval on Cam Ward, which should be accessible with the link that should be on the screen now, as I have more details in that. Also, if you want to check out my grades and evals of the quarterbacks from last year for reference, you can check them out with the link in the description. For any new viewers, I have evals and full scouting reports out for Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Jalen Milroe, and Will Howard, which you can check out on my channel now. Also, I'll be trying to cover a quarterback nearly every week leading up to the 2025 NFL Draft, so if you don't want to miss out on any future quarterback evals, be sure to subscribe. Now let's take a look at McCord. Also, before we get started, as I mentioned in previous videos, I'm a contributor for DLF or DynastyLeagueFootball.com, and while that won't affect this channel or my content here, if you haven't used DLF or want to try the premium service, new users can use my discount code BACKSEAT99 to sign up for DLF Premium for just 99 cents for the first month. That'll give you full access to all their articles, rankings, tools, and more. Now I mentioned this before, but I always want to make sure I repeat it to make sure it's clear, but that makes DLF Premium 99 cents for the first month, and if you don't like it, then you can cancel it within that first month and not be charged more than that 99 cents. But if you do forget to cancel it after that first month, or you want to continue using it, it'll be $12.99 every month. Starting with a quick look at his basic stats, in case you missed it, Kyle McCord set the single season record for passing yards in a single season for the ACC. Now he did do that on 592 pass attempts, but getting that record should still get some respect. In addition to the 4,779 passing yards he put up, he also completed 66% of his passes, had 34 passing touchdowns, but did have 12 interceptions. McCord isn't much of a rusher as you can see with a negative rushing total, and while it is good to see him still getting 3 rushing touchdowns, the 5 fumbles is a nice deal, especially when you add in the 12 interceptions he had. As for the games I decided to chart, Syracuse didn't have a very hard schedule, so it made things a bit easier to select, so I ended up doing his Miami, Cal, Pitt, and Georgia Tech games. If you're just doing a quick skim and looking at those stat totals from those games that I charted, the stat totals all probably look good until you get to the Pitt game, which feels like a game of one of these things is not like the other from Sesame Street, with McCord completing just 54.7% of his passes for 321 yards, no touchdowns, and throwing 5 interceptions having a fumble. We'll do a deeper dive into that game later, but the rest of the games look really good, with McCord completing over 60% of his passes, throwing for over 300 yards, and not throwing any interception in those games. So let's take a look at how McCord graded out and see if he's closer to his performance against Pitt or his other performances of the rest of the season. Starting with his footwork, mechanically there are a lot of improvements he'll need to make, but starting with the positives, he can usually do a good job getting his feet quickly turned in time to his receiver on short patterns. That being said, he didn't do a lot of standard dropbacks with a lot of simplified set and throw or 3-step dropbacks, but the times he did do a more standard dropback, it was pretty heel clicky with his drop base being way too narrow at times. In general, I think his base width from the pocket can be all over the place and gets really messy when he's under pressure. He can also get hot and cold as a passer, and his footwork is often a factor of going into a cold streak. While his accuracy as a whole is good, there are a lot of throws that make you go, what was that? Due to them being so far off target due to poor lower body mechanics. He also has a tendency to put too much weight on his back foot when throwing the ball, which contribute to a number of these way off targets. He also has a tendency to bounce in the pocket and can sometimes get stuck on his toes when throwing the ball. Finally, while on the move, he doesn't always do a great job getting his chest and toes squared to his target, leading to some inaccurate throws, especially downfield. So with his footwork still not being close to NFL standards and affecting his accuracy at times, McCord ended up earning just a D+ for his footwork. Moving to his pocket presence, he is generally pretty reliable in getting the ball out before pressure gets to him thanks to his quick release, leading to a lot of success against pressure and blitzes. And even under pressure, he does a good job knowing where to place the ball to protect his pass catcher, which I'm sure they greatly appreciate. However, he can be a bit delayed in recognizing that pressure and has trouble multitasking when he's required to read the defense as well. He can also get a bit too overconfident in his athleticism and end up taking sacks when he had a chance for a throwaway or a checkdown. I'd also like to see a bit more positive movement from him in the pocket and not just trail back like he tends to do sometimes. That can make things very difficult for him, especially since he just has solid but not great arm strength to drive it when moving backwards. With more good than bad, and admittedly his release making things a bit easier for him, McCord ended up earning a B- for his pocket presence. Speaking of his release, let's move to his arm strength and release. As I mentioned before, McCord doesn't have the strongest arm, but it is adequate for the NFL. What's really good though is that release of his, as I mentioned before. He likely has the cleanest release mechanics in the class with very little dip and not too much depth in his pullback. He also has a good feel for his release points to put some nice touch on throws. It's just such a snappy, quick release that combined with his quick decision making can make things very frustrating for pass rushers who don't have a chance to make a play. While his release is really clean and quick, there are times when he's trying to get more air under the ball where he'll have a bit more of a windup and flare out as he's trying to use his whole body to put some more strength in the ball. He also tries to throw at different arm angles at times, but it doesn't always work out, and he just doesn't have the arm to get those throws too far past the line of scrimmage. Part of the issue is due to his lack of great arm strength, which also shows in those situations, as well as when he struggles to put great velocity on the ball when thrown to the opposite side of the field. As I mentioned though, McCord's arm strength is just good enough for the NFL, which ends up earning him a B- for arm strength. His release on the other hand is really good and ended up earning him a B+. Going to McCord's playmaking, ball security, and top star potential, maybe this is a bit of a spoiler, but even though he set the ACC single season passing record, he didn't earn that high of a grade for playmaking. Now he definitely has that gunslinger mentality to not only be able to drive the ball downfield, but also to attack tight windows. In fact, it doesn't happen very often with quarterbacks with less than stellar arms, but some of the throws McCord went for and converted on will make you go, wow, with the amount of guts it took to make that throw. The problem is some of the throws that he also makes that don't go to his target make it go, wow, in a more negative way. There's a lot of times when his target is covered and he'll just say, F it, I'm going to try to squeeze it in. Now it has been good to see McCord have newfound confidence at Syracuse, but sometimes he just has to reel it in just a bit. Part of the issue that also leads to some of the bad decisions, and the scariest thing honestly about his whole eval for me, is his tendency to stare down his pass catcher. There are so many times when his eyes are frozen and just completely key in the defense where the ball is going. As I mentioned, we'll do a deeper dive in the charting from the Pitt game, but you can just tell from the box score that Pitt punished him all game for staring, and that'll be a regular thing in the NFL if he doesn't adapt. Add in the fact that he doesn't offer too much on the ground, and it starts to question how much of the offense was cooking because of McCord, or because of good play design and lesser competition. Now, McCord definitely has some good moments, so I don't want to deny that, but in the NFL, you need to be able to shift gears mid-play when the initial read isn't there, and I'm just not confident McCord is there yet. Which is the really unfortunate thing because had he been granted another year of eligibility, he hopefully could have improved his processing with another year in the same offense. Unfortunately, he ended up having to declare, and now we need to play the what-if game with him. From what we could see of him going through his progressions, he was often a tick slow at getting the ball to his pass catchers, leaving an opening for the defender to make a play. That opening could also open up the opportunity for a turnover, so between the interceptions he was caught staring, the fumbles he gave up, and the interceptions from being a tick slow, there's just a lot of turnovers McCord was responsible for. While the raw stats are nice, I do just question how high of a ceiling a quarterback with a good, not great arm, turnover issues, processing issues, and limited scramble ability truly has in the NFL. So with the questions I have of how much he is capable of elevating an NFL offense when his first read isn't there, and how much NFL defenses could take advantage of his staring, he ended up with just a C- for his playmaking. For his ball security, McCord had an interception or fumble on 17 of his 659 combined pass and rush attempts, which turns into an interception or fumble on every 38.76 pass or rush attempt. Per my scale, that earned McCord a C+. Now, there could definitely be a fair argument that the drop in that grade is due to his Pitt game, which is definitely true. However, even if we exclude the turnovers from that game and the pass and rush attempts, that only raises his grade to a B- per my scale. So definitely better, but it's not like the turnovers aren't an issue for him outside of that game. As for his top star potential, with his questionable ceiling, he only earned a C-. So we've talked a lot about that Pitt game, so let's now start to get into his charting to see both his 4-game sample as well as that Pitt game results. If you're a visual viewer, we're seeing a really pretty passing chart here. There's very few areas that are red and nearly the rest are green with a couple yellow areas in the deep areas of the field. Starting at the bottom, McCord was fantastic in the short left at 90.48% and good in the short right at 78.85%. The short middle wasn't as great at 75%, and his medium right also was a lower 70.45%, but the rest was awesome. 78.57% in the medium left and 83.33% in the medium middle. The really awesome thing to see was his success in the intermediate area of the field, with a 58.33% in the intermediate left, 100% in the middle, and 61.54% in the right. all those are very good and all at least in the 70th percentile compared to last year's class. Those are all areas that he'll absolutely need to be able to win in the NFL with him being limited to a pocket passer, so this is great to see. His deep accuracy also looks solid with 50% in the deep right and middle and 100% in the deep left, albeit with the equivalent only one throw factoring into that score in that area. So while a lot of quarterbacks have clear strengths and weaknesses in the passing charts in terms of areas of the field, McCord is the rare case in this draft that does well in all areas. He obviously wasn't perfect and didn't score as high in specific areas as other quarterbacks, but in a way his accuracy chart is a case of a jack of all trades, master of none, which will be appealing to any offensive scheme. Now unfortunately McCord's off-platform accuracy isn't as pretty and shows some of his limitations both in his mechanics, but also when things break down. In a way it's almost an inverse of his on-platform charting, with only 2 green areas and the rest being red or gray. For his green areas, he managed to get a score of 77.78% in the short right and 78.57% in the medium left. However, he nearly didn't hit 70% for any of the other remaining areas, with just a score of 70.59% in the short left, 62.5% in the short middle, 66.67% in the medium right, and 0% in both intermediate left and right. The limited attacks in the middle could be argued as a positive as he isn't throwing across his body, but honestly I think he's shown that he isn't afraid to be risky with the ball and is more a sign of his limitations. The charting also correlates to my point I made earlier with his footwork section, as mechanics on the move can fluctuate and affect his accuracy on the move. Also, these numbers are really concerning because, as I said before, when his first read is taken away, he'll need to be able to move on to his next progression, which he struggles with. And if that first read is taken away and he's moved off his spot, it seems more times than not results in a win for the defense. Now, to finally cover his Pitt game. While it definitely wasn't perfect, this absolutely could have been a lot worse than it was based off his final stat line. He still did a good job attacking the intermediate areas in the deep right, but got into the most trouble closer to the line of scrimmage with some bad accuracy scores and some mistakes. Now for context of his interceptions, his second, fourth, and fifth interceptions were interceptions off of deflections, which may sound fluky, but honestly if he had better placement on his second and fourth interception, they likely wouldn't have been deflected in the first place. Also, that fifth interception, as well as his first and third, were all off of hard stares where the defense read his eyes. So that's just inexcusable to let a defense catch you staring 3 times in a game. So while his accuracy is better than expected, the decision-making and staring was just awful this game, and he'll need to prove to NFL teams that this type of performance isn't going to happen to him in the NFL. As for his off-platform numbers against Pitt, not surprisingly, but they weren't overly impressive, with a lot of the same struggle areas as he had in his larger sample. He was still good in the medium left at 83.33%, but was actually also good in the short middle at 83.33%. The rest was the same struggles though, with 61.11% in the short left, 66.67% in the short right, 50% in the medium right, and 0% in immediate right on the single attempt there. So again, this Pitt game just paints a cautionary tale of how everything can go wrong if a defense is reading his eyes, leading to a lot of turnovers, and also from his struggles when trying to make throws on the move. So now moving on to the supplemental data from his charted games. McCord has fantastic accuracy in the left and middle areas of the field, with 75.31% in the left and 78.26% in the right, which are both at least in the 70th percentile compared to last year. He had a less than stellar finish on the right side of the field at just 68.07%, which was just below the 50th percentile. But the right side of the field just barely being below the 50th percentile, and the left and middle both being very good and in the upper percentile, McCord finished with a total accuracy score of 72.46%, which was easily in the upper percentile. With his shaky footwork, he had a fair number of way off throws both in the pocket and on the move, with 12 total in the pocket or on platform, and 6 total on the move or off platform. With his lack of scramble ability despite what he thinks of himself, he had a fair number of sacks per game with 10 total or 2.5 per game, and 2 fumbles. He did have a fair number of deflections at the line of scrimmage, and I think a major contributor to that was due to his staring and linemen ready to jump on the ball. Also for reference, he only had 2 pass interference calls in the games I sampled, and though he took a fair number of sacks, things could have been a lot worse had he not been more willing to throw it away, as he had 2 per game. Unfortunately, things could have been even worse with his interceptions, with 5 total, all being from the Pitt game and the sampled games, but 6 dropped interceptions. So if the defense made plays on those balls, that would have been 11 total interceptions in these 4 games, or nearly 3 a game. So that's why I again stress that even if you exclude that Pitt game, there's a clear turnover issue for McCord. Also for reference, he had 6 drops by his pass catchers in the sample games, which is on the lower side compared to his peers. Also, it kind of just serves as reference as well. As I mentioned, he isn't much of a scrambler, but he only had 8 design runs and 4 scrambles in the sample games. Finally, my concerns when things go off script also show with his success against blitz and pressure. He had poor blitz success at just 54.88%, which was below the 50th percentile, and 53.85% for success against pressure, which was slightly above average. He also had trouble against both on deeper concepts, and he could either lose track of the pass rush if his first read is taken away, or if the route didn't have time to develop. Also, I definitely don't want to discredit him, but a lot what helped him win in those situations was his quick release and getting the ball out so quickly. Now that definitely could help him in the NFL, but with him being a tick slow and reacting to pressure and blitzes, I just worry that the faster defenders in the NFL will close the gaps more quickly, leading to more sacks and wins by the defense. So with some great results in his charting, he ended up with an A- for his short throw accuracy, B+ for medium accuracy, B for intermediate accuracy, B for deep throw, B+ for his throw on the run, and a not so great B- for his success against blitz and pressure. As a summary of McCord's strengths, he's a very gutsy passer who has decided that he wants to be a gunslinger now. That can definitely get him into trouble, but that confidence to drive the ball into tight windows ensures that he isn't a passive pocket passer who only just is willing to chip away at a defense. While he's a gunslinger, he isn't reckless in terms of endangering his pass catchers and does a good job protecting them when he throws the balls to them to be able to protect them from big hits. His release is also great and one of the most technically clean in class. That gets him out of jams and will often frustrate a pass rush with the way he can get the ball out of his hands before they get a chance to lay a hand on him. Finally, his accuracy is very good in all areas of the field and should translate to the NFL. As for areas McCord still needs to improve, his footwork still isn't there and led to a number of throws being well off their mark. It didn't help all the time as his accuracy was good, but when he's off, he's really off. Speaking of that, he can be very hot and cold as a passer. When he's in rhythm, he's cooking and making things look easy. But then he can have a few errors and struggle to get himself back on track. Speaking of track, he can also lose track of the pass rush on deeper concepts, which if he's going to be a pocket passer in the NFL, he will need to improve at. He'll also need to improve how much staring he does, as eyes are extremely easy to read at times even by college players and will absolutely lead to trouble in the NFL. If he doesn't improve his eyes and processing, the high number of turnovers he could commit could lose him a spot on an NFL roster. So by taking the averages of all of McCord's grades, he ended up scoring a 2.69 out of 4, which ends up being in my may have a future role tier. I think it's a fair placement for McCord to end up since there are traits that are exciting with his newfound confidence, release, and good accuracy in all areas of the field. However, there are a lot of areas that need to be ironed out before he's playing an NFL regular season game, including his decision making and processing. I think McCord likely will end up being a backup quarterback for a team, and how high quality of a backup he turns into will likely depend on where he goes. If he goes to a place with a good offensive game plan and system, we could see him closer to his Syracuse form. However, if things are disjointed and his confidence gets shaky again, things get really tough, and especially with the turnovers, I think it's just hard to see him hold on to a spot long term. As for a comp, I have to comp him to another quarterback I was high on in a previous draft who ended up not panning out, but I'm now recognizing where things went wrong. So I have Bailey Zappi as McCord's comp. Both Zappi and McCord have very twitchy, fast releases that let them fit the ball into tight windows and before pressure can hit home, while also having some really solid accuracy to all areas of the field. However, both can get fixated on their first read, lack great arm strength, and have really messy footwork. Also, both can get overconfident in their athletic ability, leading to unnecessary sacks, and overconfident in their ability to make a throw, leading to bad interceptions. Zappi has started to be tossed around the NFL due to not being able to read an NFL defense and still struggling with turnovers while not having great arms talent to be able to overcome those deficits. I have concerns the same could happen to McCord. If he does make those adjustments though, I think he could have a very long career as a backup quarterback in the NFL. And that's all for Kyle McCord. Let me know what your thoughts are on the eval and on McCord since he may be going under the radar after a poor finish to his Ohio State career. I'll be working to have a quarterback eval most of the weeks leading up to the draft, so to be sure you don't miss any of them, be sure to subscribe. While you're at it, like the video as it would help the channel, this series grow thanks to you. If you want just a written form of the eval, you can subscribe to my Substack as I'll have the full written eval for each player out at the same time as the video. But thank you all and see you all next time.